Imagine two parallel workplace universes just a few years apart. In one circa 2015, a millennial proudly tweets, "Team no sleep, crushing this 80-hour work week, the grind never stops." In the other circa 2025, a Gen Z employee updates their Slack status, "My work-life boundaries are non-negotiable." Ooh! What happened? How did we go from a generation that glorified overwork as a badge of honor to one that champions balance with unapologetic clarity? This isn't just a difference in personal preference. It's a massive cultural earthquake reshaping the entire world of work. A startling 2024 Gallup poll reveals that nearly 60% of young employees feel disengaged, with many citing burnout and a poor work-life balance. So where do you stand? Are you unknowingly trapped in a toxic hustle cycle, or are you missing out on growth by prioritizing comfort too much? Today, we're decoding the generational war over work. What is hustle culture? Why was it the gospel for millennials? And what drove Gen Z to lead a full-blown work-life balance revolution? Get ready to confront some hard truths and find your own equilibrium. You won't want to miss this. Hit that subscribe button for Genshift, and let's dive into the battle for balance. Part 1, Hustle Culture, the golden and grueling age of millennials. To understand the present, we have to go back to the past. So what exactly is hustle culture? At its core, it's an ideology that treats extreme work ethic not just as a means to an end, but as a moral virtue. It's the belief that success is directly proportional to the hours you pour in. This philosophy dominated the late 2000s and 2010s, defined by mantras like rise and grind and the glamorization of the 14-hour workday. It was fueled by the larger-than-life stories of tech titans like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk, who famously said that nobody ever changed the world on 40 hours a week, creating a powerful narrative that the average person could achieve extraordinary success if they just sacrificed enough. This message landed on fertile ground with millennials. This was a generation that came of age during not one but two major economic recessions, including the 2008 global financial crisis. They entered a hyper-competitive job market saddled with unprecedented student loan debt, making financial security feel like a distant dream. Despite this, early research from Pew showed they were surprisingly optimistic, believing they could hack their way to a prosperous life. Hustle culture became their playbook. In a 2019 poll, a staggering 48% of Americans, with millennials being the largest demographic in the workforce, self-identified as workaholics. This was all supercharged by technology. The rise of the smartphone meant work was no longer a place you went, but a thing you carried in your pocket. Emails at dinner, Slack notifications on vacation. The digital leash created an always-on environment that was the perfect accelerant for the hustle fire. For many millennials, the hustle wasn't a passion project. It was a desperate, flawed survival strategy. They were told that extreme personal effort was the one variable they could control to overcome systemic economic instability. The tragic irony is that this very strategy for survival became the source of their exhaustion. Part 2, The Rise of Work-Life Balance, Gen Z's Revolution. As millennials were grinding themselves down, a new generation was watching and taking notes. When Gen Z began entering the workforce in the late 2010s and early 2020s, they arrived with a radically different operating system, one pre-installed with the mantra, "Work to live, don't live to work." For them, work-life balance isn't a nice-to-have, it's a non-negotiable. They openly demand flexible hours, robust mental health support, and a life outside of their job title. This isn't just talk. We see it in action with trends like quiet quitting and acting your wage concepts we'll explore deeper in a moment. We see it in the data. A groundbreaking 2025 Deloitte survey found that only 6% of Gen Z employees say their primary career goal is to reach a senior leadership position. This isn't a lack of ambition, it's a complete redefinition of it. They're ambitious about acquiring skills, having meaningful experiences, and most importantly, preserving their well-being. Think of the tangible examples: a Gen Z employee who, instead of feigning a cough, confidently tells their manager they're taking a mental health day because they feel overwhelmed, or the new hire who politely declines to answer work emails after 5 p.m., not out of defiance, but because they believe their time is their own. So why did Gen Z arrive with this perspective from day one? A huge factor is the witness effect. They saw their older siblings and millennial colleagues burn out in real time. They saw the 80-hour work weeks that led not to a promotion but to a layoff notice, teaching them a harsh lesson about corporate loyalty. Furthermore, Gen Z is the first generation to grow up in a world where mental health is openly discussed and increasingly destigmatized. They have the language and the social permission to talk about anxiety and burnout in a way millennials often didn't. They concluded that the millennial strategy of sacrificing personal health for potential career gain was a bad bet. Gen Z's demand for balance is a calculated, proactive risk management strategy designed to protect their most valuable asset, their long-term health, in a system they view as inherently unstable. Part 3: Why the Shift? A deep dive into the causes. The chasm between these two philosophies didn't appear overnight. It was carved by three powerful forces: the painful consequences of the hustle, a seismic shift in social values, and cold, hard economic reality. First, let's talk about the bill coming due for millennials. By the time they reached their 30s and 40s, many were hitting a wall. Aflac's 2025 report found that millennials are the most burned out generation, with a staggering 66% reporting moderate to high levels. Even more shocking, a Talker research survey found that while the average American hits peak burnout at age 42, millennials and Gen Z report hitting it at just 25. This burnout manifested as a crisis of meaning. Gallup's ongoing research shows a steady decline in employee engagement, particularly in feeling cared for by their organization, a clear sign that the human cost of the hustle was becoming unbearable. Second, social values underwent a complete transformation, largely driven by social media. While millennial Instagram feeds in the 2010s were filled with #rise and grind and #hustle hard motivational quotes, Gen Z's TikTok is a different universe. It's dominated by #self-care, #slow living, and anti-hustle content that romanticizes rest and boundary setting. They were raised in an era where mindfulness and mental wellness were part of the curriculum, making them inherently skeptical of a culture that celebrates exhaustion. The trending hashtags tell the story. The cultural conversation shifted from glorifying burnout to actively diagnosing and rejecting it. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, the economic promises made to millennials simply didn't hold true for Gen Z. Millennials were sold a dream: work hard, and you can still climb the ladder, buy a house, and achieve the American dream. Gen Z entered a world of soaring inflation, a gig economy with little security, and a housing market that felt laughably out of reach. This economic pragmatism is the engine behind trends like acting your wage. The logic is simple: why give an employer 150% of your effort when wages have stagnated and the system no longer guarantees a return on that extra investment? They saw the hustle as a high-risk, low-reward proposition and opted out. So where do you fit in this picture? Are you #team hustle or #team balance? What experiences have shaped your own views on work? Share your story in the comments below. We genuinely want to hear it. Part 4: The data and the disruption impact on the modern workplace. This generational shift isn't just theoretical, it's causing tangible disruption in workplaces everywhere. The data paints a clear picture of two different worlds colliding. While a decade ago nearly half of millennials might have proudly worked overtime, recent data suggests Gen Z is far less willing. One survey showed 76% of Gen Z would prioritize work-life balance over a higher salary. Furthermore, research from organizations like Pew and Catalyst consistently shows that over 70% of Gen Z employees prioritize working for a company that has a positive impact, aligns with their values, and fosters an inclusive culture. This has forced companies to adapt or risk becoming obsolete in the war for talent. The most radical adaptation is the rise of the 4-day work week, and it's not just a fantasy. Large-scale global trials have produced mind-blowing results. Companies that switched to a 32-hour week saw on average a 15% increase in revenue, a 32% drop in staff turnover, and a stunning 69% reduction in employee burnout, all while maintaining or even boosting productivity. However, this transition creates new friction. A millennial manager conditioned by years of hustle might see a Gen Z employee leaving at 5:1 p.m. sharp as a lack of commitment. Meanwhile, the Gen Z employee sees it as a healthy, non-negotiable boundary. This intergenerational conflict is one of the biggest challenges for leaders today. But in the long run, the benefits of this shift are becoming undeniable. A workforce that is less burned out is more creative, more engaged, and more loyal. Companies are discovering that promoting balance isn't a soft perk. It's a powerful strategy for sustainable performance. The business case for balance is no longer a matter of opinion, it's a matter of data. This forces us to redefine success, moving away from a culture that rewards presence to one that rewards performance, and from one that celebrates sacrifice to one that champions sustainability. Part 5. Finding the Sweet Spot, a guide to sustainable success. So after all this, is hustle culture bad and work-life balance good? The reality is more nuanced. Hustle culture at its best is about drive, ambition, and the pursuit of excellence. These are powerful positive traits. It only becomes toxic when it demands the sacrifice of your well-being and becomes your entire identity. On the flip side, work-life balance isn't about being lazy or complacent. It's about working smarter, not just harder, so you can be productive at work and present in your life. The most effective Gen Z employees aren't slacking off. They're fiercely protective of their focus during their 8 hours so they can fully disconnect after. For you as an individual, the key is to find your own dynamic equilibrium. Your career is not a sprint, it's a marathon with different phases. There will be times when you need to hustle, launching a project, starting a business, learning a new skill. The danger is letting that temporary sprint become your permanent pace. Set clear goals for your hustle phases, and just as importantly, schedule periods of rest and recovery. For different generations in the workplace, the path forward is empathy and communication. Millennials can mentor Gen Z on navigating complex corporate structures and the value of persistent effort. In return, Gen Z can teach millennials how to set boundaries, prioritize mental health, and unlearn the toxic belief that their self-worth is tied to their productivity. By understanding the different economic and social pressures that shaped each other, we can move from conflict to collaboration. The ultimate goal isn't to choose a side, but to combine the drive of the hustle with the wisdom of balance to create a workplace that is both high-achieving and humane. So, hustle culture, or work-life balance. This isn't just a workplace debate. It's a profound reflection of what each generation values and how we define a life well lived. Whether you lean towards #team hustle or #team balance, one thing is certain: this generational collision is forcing a necessary and powerful evolution in the world of work. It compels us to ask a critical question: is grinding yourself to dust the only path to success, or is there a smarter, more sustainable way forward where both our ambition and our well-being can coexist? Which team are you on? Let us know your thoughts and experiences in the comments. And if you're trying to find that perfect balance in your own life, make sure you subscribe to Genshift. We'll be exploring more ways to work smarter and live better as we continue to decode the future of work together.